Exposed, my daughter's husband's incredible decision to rob me revealed an unexpected truth. Gary's hands trembled slightly as he flipped through the financial records of Sweet Maple Bakery. The familiar creases of his worn ledger stared back at him like grim reminders of impending disaster. Each figure reflected storms of worries that had gathered over the years, but now, unmistakably, something was off. A sinking feeling lodged itself in his gut, unbearable and persistent. For weeks, he had noticed discrepancies, vague transactions that didn't fit, diminishing cash flow, but the reality of betrayal was something he had never prepared for. Ryan, his son-in-law, had been siphoning funds from their family business. Betrayal and frostbite inked the pages like a twisted gust of winter's breath. How could Emma's husband commit such a heinous act? As the dough rested on the counter beside him, Gary's mind spun. He remembered the pride and joy of handing down the bakery to Emma. Now, with every unchecked balance, it felt like a fading dream. He struggled to focus, the scent of freshly baked bread no longer comforting, it now suffocated him. Visions of their cherished family gathered around the bakery's kitchen table blurred into anguish. How could he confront Ryan without destroying Emma? Yet the questions gnawed at him relentlessly. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. Rage began boiling under Gary's skin as he staged the confrontation in his mind. He could picture it clearly, the face of the man who had wormed his way into their lives, lounging with Emma, listening to their dreams while feeding off the bakery's hard-earned profits. The thought sent waves of indignation through him, twisting knots of muscle in his shoulders. Gary's breath became irregular, the weight of his dilemmas a ticking time bomb. Pommes frites. How dare he betray them both? The showdown played out in stark detail with each striking moment that unfolded. Confronting Ryan felt like a perilous tightrope walk, where one misstep could send everything crashing down. The notion of family entangled with anger formed a web that nearly suffocated him. Could he press charges? Or was it more just to understand? Each path pulsed with the potential to destroy or heal. Who was he really confronting? Ryan's actions or the reflection of his own fears that buried deep? As they gathered for dinner that evening, emotions simmered like melted chocolate, waiting for the right catalyst to unleash chaos. Tension hung thick in the air, discussions starting and stopping, as truths darted and weaved like so many quicksilver fish. Gary matched each glance with steely resolve, but he could feel his heart soften. Ryan, with his charming exterior, had concealed shadows that mirrored his own. The familiar truth began to dawn, one not just of betrayal but of desperate survival. In this delicate balance of bread and betrayal, greed and compassion, Gary wrestled with the haunting question that now pressed upon him: could he bring himself to forgive a man motivated by insatiable fear? Or would justice demand its due, ripping apart the fragile fabric of their family? As night enveloped the quaint streets of Maplewood, the final moment of truth loomed, and Gary stood, breathless, clenching his fists in front of the warm oven, waiting to face the darkness ahead. The following morning brought with it an ominous chill that seeped through the walls of Sweet Maple Bakery. Gary awoke to the sound of the bell chiming the opening hour, but today, the familiar melody felt like a funeral dirge. The weight of his discovery sat heavily on his chest as he moved through the motions of preparation, crafting pastries and kneading dough with mechanical precision. The bright morning sun streamed through the windows, illuminating the flour-covered counters but failing to penetrate the shadow lurking in his heart. Each movement in the kitchen felt like an attempt to distract himself. Yet, as the mixers whirred and the ovens hummed, the same questions gnawed within him, relentless and sharp. Should he confront Ryan today? The thought that had once exhilarated him was now laced with dread. Confrontation held the potential for necessary clarity, but it could also unearth irreparable ruin within their family. What was more damaging, a reckoning or silence? He leaned against the cool countertop, his eyes scanning the endless rows of freshly baked goods. This bakery represented dream and legacy. Could it simultaneously be the battleground for betrayal? The aroma of yeast and sugar wafted through the air, usually a source of comfort. Now it felt suffocating, like a heavy cloak tightening across his shoulders. "Dad, everything okay?" Emma's voice broke through his haze, pulling him back to the present. Her face, still flushed from sleep, was etched with concern as she approached, carrying a tray of coffee. It felt deceptively mundane. "Yeah, just thinking." "About Ryan?" she asked, her eyes probing deeper than he anticipated. A lump formed in Gary's throat. How much did she know? Was she aware of the turmoil consuming him? The last thing he wanted was to unleash his conflict upon her, to make her bear the weight of her husband's actions. But this all-consuming secret felt too burdensome for one man to carry alone. "Just about the bakery, what it means to us. It's been our life for so long," he replied, hoping the feigned normalcy would mask the truth. Emma nodded, her expression indecipherable. She began polishing one of the display cases, her movements automatic, a reflection of Gary's internal struggle. The thought of sharing the burden with her stirred something within. What if she knew the truth? Would it bind them tighter together, or would it fracture their bond? With a deep breath, Gary resolved to tell her. The choice hung in the air, palpable and heavy. "Emma, your husband, there are things happening, things I didn't want you to know," he started, but doubts crept in. What would he say? How could he convey the tumult without shattering her illusion of family? Before he could gather his thoughts, the bell above the door jingled, signaling the entry of a regular customer. He glanced toward the door and saw Ryan stroll in, a casual grin plastered on his face as he greeted Emma. The tension in Gary's gut coiled tighter, the moments stretching like an elastic band fraught with potential snapping. Guilt threatened to drown him as he watched the ease with which Ryan connected with his daughter. In that moment, the blurred lines of family, loyalty, and condemnation sharpened. Gary had to make a choice: accept the double life being led under his roof, or unravel the tangled threads that would either liberate them or destroy them. "All right, it's time to face the music," he murmured under his breath, a determination flickering to life through the haze. As Ryan approached him, all affability and misplaced confidence, Gary felt a sudden surge of clarity. The time had come to confront the man who had upended everything he held dear. Gary clenched his fists, the other looming questions falling away like stale dough. Yet, even as he prepared for the confrontation, doubt seeped into his resolve. Would this confrontation yield clarity or fuel the fire of ruin? With thought consuming him, he met Ryan's gaze. An unseen tension crackled between them like a raw wire waiting to unleash chaos. The winds of change howled through the old bakery, and in this moment, Gary understood that life within the warmth of a family's embrace was often just as fragile as the bread he baked. Gary's heart raced as Ryan ambled closer, the cheerful facade unnerving in the tense atmosphere. He could see the flicker of recognition in his son-in-law's eyes that infuriated him further. With each step, the familiar comfort of the bakery faded, replaced by the icy grip of impending confrontation. "Morning, Gary," Ryan chimed, energy radiating from him like nothing was amiss. Gary felt his fists tighten, battling the instinct to deny and ignore. It would have been so easy to slip back into the rhythm of the day, to pretend that everything was fine. "Just get to it," he muttered mentally, bracing for the confrontation that loomed just out of reach. Ryan leaned against the counter, beaming at Emma as she poured coffee, blissfully unaware of the tempest brewing beneath the surface. Gary's throat went dry, the taste of bile rising as he thought of the conflict yet to unfold. How had he let things get this far? He felt the walls of his carefully constructed world closing in, fragile memories of laughter and warmth swirling like dust in a sunny shaft of light. "Everything's great," Ryan continued, oblivious to the undercurrent of tension. "I was hoping to talk to you later about some ideas for the bakery. You know, take it to the next level." Gary's breath hitched at the audacity, the flip side of betrayal exposing itself through every word. The next level? What did that even mean to a man so immersed in duplicity? "Ryan," he said, forcing the words out like pebbles from a clenched fist, "we need to talk." The humor melted off Ryan's face as a perplexed expression took its place. For a brief moment, Gary relished the uncertainty in Ryan's piercing gaze, understanding dawned. But with that satisfaction came a swell of fear. What would he glean from this confrontation? Would he expose the wound or merely poke at a scab that had yet to heal? "About what, Dad?" Ryan asked, feigning innocence, but the muscles in his jaw tightened, his defenses fortifying themselves around whatever secrets he may still harbor. "About us. About you and Emma." Gary's voice was steadier than he felt, an iron facade encasing the churning uncertainty inside. He could see shifts in Ryan, his shoulders straightened, the glimmer of defiance sparking to life in his eyes. "What is there to discuss? We're all family here, right?" Ryan's question reeked of bravado, but Gary could sense the tremor beneath it. "Family or betrayal?" The words escaped as a challenge, raw and unfiltered, cutting the space between them. Emma, having poured her coffee, turned at the remark, a frown pulling at her brow. "What is going on?" she asked, worry threading through her voice like a lifeline thrown between them. "I'm having a grown-up conversation with Ryan," Gary said, his gaze unwavering. Ryan's bravado crumbled for a brief heartbeat before he retaliated with contempt. "You don't have to tell her everything, Gary." In that moment, a ripple of conflict pulsed through the bakery, fanfare replaced by tension heavy enough to be sliced through. Gary could feel his own resolve hardening, determined not just to protect his daughter but also to reclaim his own sense of agency. The stakes were larger than he ever intended. "Everything needs to come out into the light," he pressed, breathing deeply to maintain composure. "You can't keep pretending this is a game." Ryan hesitated, the masks slipping away, revealing the disappointment and arrogance beneath. Gary could sense the shifting ground beneath them, both aware that the future hinged on this moment. "Just know," Ryan began, his voice deceptively soft, "there are always consequences for exposing the truth." The words hung ominously in the air, a warning cloaked in menace that sent a chill down Gary's spine. He fought against the wave of fear threatening to drown his resolve. "Then let us talk about those consequences," Gary replied firmly, reclaiming his power, a burgeoning confidence igniting deep within. With the bakery feeling smaller with every heartbeat, he locked eyes with Ryan, recognizing that this was no longer about just unveiling betrayal. It was about self-affirmation, about illustrating the boundary between what was acceptable and what wouldn't be tolerated. Today, confrontation was not a finality but merely the beginning of reclamation. Gary took a step closer, the light of determination shining through his uncertainty. "Let us lay it all on the table," he challenged, his voice resolute as resolve cemented itself into his path. Whatever came next would define not only the rest of their day but the very essence of their family. As the clock ticked away moments of heartbeats and breaths, Gary braced for the unveiling truths that awaited, ready for the next layer of chaos to unravel. Little did he know the ground beneath would shift in ways he never anticipated, steering him into uncharted territory he could never have imagined. Ryan's cocky demeanor faltered, the smirk replaced by a cocked brow framed by the growing weight of Gary's words. The tension in the bakery thickened, starch and sugar now mingled with the electricity of unfiltered truths demanding to be spoken. Gary could sense Ryan's hesitation, a flicker of doubt igniting as the facade of innocence began to crack. "All right, let us hear it then," Ryan said, crossing his arms defensively. The defiance returned, but it felt fragile, a paper shield against a tempest ready to unfold. Gary noticed how the typical buzz of the bakery faded into the background, the clatter of dishes and chatter between customers diminished to a dull hum, leaving just the two of them enveloped in an unrelenting silence. Clarity washed over Gary, a moment of reflection amidst the turbulent waters of their confrontation. He realized this was about more than defining the boundaries of familial relationships. It was also about his own identity and the strength he had almost forgotten he possessed. He had spent so much time nurturing the bakery, pouring his heart into it, but somehow felt like a stranger in his own life. "Do you think this is going to be easy?" Gary's voice broke through, laced with a blend of anger and resolve. "You can't just waltz in here and act like everything is normal. Not after everything that has happened. Not after everything we both know." The corner of Ryan's mouth twitched, betraying a flicker of nervousness that Gary reveled in. This was a man who had tried to dismantle him, and now he was watching as Ryan's defenses started to collapse under the weight of exposure. "You think I don't care?" Ryan shot back, eyes narrowing. "I've done everything for this family. And you just don't see it." "For this family?" Gary could feel the truth spilling from him like the flour that dusted his hands. "You've seen my daughter as nothing more than a trophy to show off. You talk about ideas for the bakery like you can sweep in and claim credit. But where was your support when it mattered?" Ryan's jaw clenched. Gary could see the wheels turning within him, the impending realization that they were no longer on equal ground. Their roles were shifting. Gary was reclaiming the authority of his world, a world Ryan had attempted to sidestep with arrogance. "I love Emma," Ryan snapped, but the hesitance in his tone betrayed him. He was trying to convince himself, and it was clearer than ever that the foundations of this supposed love were cracked and unstable. "Love?" Gary laughed, the sound bitter and confrontational. "Is that what this has become? A word wrapped around the consequences of deceit?" He wanted to break the illusion Ryan had spun, to shatter his complacency. "Do you really think that's enough?" The revelation hung in the air as Ryan hesitated, battling the swell of guilt that somehow was freezing his defenses. It opened the door to the uncharted territory Gary needed to explore further. It was clear that he was peeling back layers of his son-in-law's character that had been meticulously crafted to conceal the truth. With each step of this confrontation, pieces of Gary's former self were rekindled. The fears, insecurities, and uncertainties that had clouded his vision, the very things that had previously held him back, were starting to dissolve. Let us not pretend that this is just about you, Gary said, voice firm but with a newfound compassion creeping in. If I let this continue, I'm not just failing you, I'm failing Emma. And I refuse to do that. Ryan shifted uneasily, a shadow of something resembling regret shadowing his expression. Gary sensed he was on the precipice of a breakthrough, one that might expose the depths of Ryan's entanglements, but could he pry loose the secrets buried deep inside? Well, what do you expect? Ryan questioned, challenging, yet the bravado seemed hollow now. You think just because you're having an epiphany, everything will change? No, Gary admitted, steeling himself for what lay ahead. I know change isn't just given, it's fought for. I've spent too long letting your actions and choices dictate my worth. But today, this ends. The bakery, once a sanctuary, now felt like a battlefield of unfolding revelations. A sense of purpose surged through him, a drive to reclaim not only his business but also his familial bonds from the grip of betrayal. I will fight for Emma, he declared, locking eyes with Ryan. And I will expose the truth, no matter the cost. As the air grew thicker with tension, Gary noticed Ryan's bravado falter even further. He sensed a pivotal moment approaching, realization dawning on both of them that decisions made this very day could irrevocably transform their relationship. Gary's heart pounded, the stakes escalating in a way he had never anticipated. Would he be able to challenge Ryan completely and expose the real intentions behind the betrayal, or would he drown in the consequences of this desperate confrontation? They stood at a crossroads, ready for the uncharted territory ahead, both men on the brink of profound change. The intensity of the moment hung around them like the faint aroma of baked bread, comforting yet suffocating. Gary's pulse raced as he stared down Ryan, who was still trying to uphold his facade. Confidence seemed to evaporate with every challenge Gary laid before him. The bakery was no longer just a place for pastries, it transformed into a courtroom where familial bonds were on trial, and the verdict could either restore or demolish everything he held dear. Do you even know what love means? Gary pressed, his voice steady despite the turmoil inside him. This wasn't just about Ryan's actions or the way he treated Emma, it was a profound confrontation with the idea of love itself. Love is built on trust, respect, and commitment. What you offer is nothing but a shadow of those values. Facing him, Ryan's brows furrowed deeper, tension radiating from him in waves. The harsh light of realization illuminated the corners of his mind where the true implications of his choices lingered. Gary could see the cracks in Ryan's emotional armor growing wider, and it invigorated him. There was a fire ignited within Gary, a flicker of the person he used to be before doubts crept in. What if I told you, Ryan muttered, his voice dropping to a whisper, that I'm not the one who has been spreading deceit? The accusation hit Gary like a slap. There was more to the story, and the way Ryan's composure had unraveled hinted that he might not be the only one guilty of creating a web of lies. What else could be at stake? Suddenly, he was not just confronting Ryan, he was entering a maze filled with unknowns that spiraled into deeper questions about loyalty and betrayal. Stop deflecting, Gary shot back, frustration bubbling to the surface. What I can't stand is how much you manipulate the situation and keep pretending you're the victim here. Just own it. Face the truth for once. His words echoed in the bakery, raw and piercing. A vivid image of Emma flashed through Gary's mind, her laughter in the kitchen, her dreams stitched together like flour and water. The thought of her innocence being compromised sent a surge of protectiveness through him, sharpening his resolve. With a renewed sense of defiance, he continued, "Tell me what you know." If you're not who I think you are, then explain it to me. Show me that you've changed. Seconds dragged like years as silence enveloped them. Gary's heart hammered against his chest, pulse racing beneath the weight of each second that passed. He fought against the waves of anxiety tumbling through his mind, desperate for answers but equally terrified of what they may reveal. Ryan's posture shifted subtly, and for a fleeting moment, vulnerability flickered in his eyes. Okay, Ryan relented, but his voice was barely above a murmur. You want the truth? I didn't mean for things to get so out of hand. I was trying to protect Emma from... From what? Gary demanded, leaning in closer, his instincts ablaze with a fear that twisted in his gut. Each word sought the core of a conflict he didn't fully understand yet. What had Ryan been protecting Emma from? The bakery transformed into a battleground of psychological warfare, painted with emotions that were no longer silent. Gary felt the air thicken with the weight of impending revelation, desperately aware that an unveiling was near, a revelation that could either save their fractured family or tear it apart irreparably. Just tell me, Ryan. What is it? Gary's command came like a thunderclap, breaking the stillness. He needed to know before he sank deeper into resentment and despair. In that strained silence, every second hung like a thread, poised to unravel everything Gary had built within both his bakery and his family. Truth was the only currency that could change their shared fate, but would Ryan have the courage to pay the price? Gary braced himself for the answer that could alter everything. As Ryan drew in a shaky breath, Gary couldn't shake the feeling that the shocking truth was just about to emerge, and he may not be ready for it. Ryan exhaled sharply, the sound mingling with the faint crackle of the bakery's overhead lights. I was trying to protect Emma from the fallout of my past choices. It was never supposed to come to this. His gaze darted away, as if the weight of his words threatened to consume him. The revelation hung in the air, charged with uncertainty. Gary felt his heart constrict, caught in a tangle of emotions. Protection? Did Ryan truly believe he had the right to shield Emma from the consequences of his actions? This wasn't just about betrayal, it was about a man trying to justify his failures. Your past. You mean the lies, don't you? Gary challenged, the intensity of his voice resonating through the bakery. You've buried everything under layers of deceit. Ryan's shoulders slumped. I made mistakes, but I did it to keep her safe. I never wanted to hurt her. The timid way he spoke punctuated the gravity of the claims haunting him, yet Gary couldn't let anger quell his curiosity. By shielding Emma from the truth, you think you're protecting her? Gary's skepticism pierced through the fog of confusion. You're only pushing her closer to the storm. The front window caught the fading daylight, casting a warm glow, contrasting sharply with the icy dread swirling within. The bakery transformed into a paradox of safety and uncertainty, a space where dreams could be crafted or dashed with the wrong ingredients. What if I told you there are others out there, people who know what I've done? And they could come into Emma's life, bringing chaos? Ryan's voice was low, laced with desperation. Are you saying there's more than just you or me involved? The thought reverberated in Gary's mind, tightening the knots of concern intertwining with protectiveness. It ignited a steely resolve in him. Not just me. There are secrets I wasn't ready to face, forces beyond my control, Ryan whispered, anxiety etching deeper lines into his features. But I thought if I kept them away, she'd be safe. A flicker of realization ignited in Gary's mind. Protecting Emma meant confronting the failures of Ryan and of himself. Keeping her in the dark only makes the shadows larger, Ryan. It's not protection, it's complicity. In that moment, Gary was no longer just an angry father or a devoted husband, he was a strategist in a battle for clarity and safety. Every layer peeled back revealed deeper levels of vulnerability in both men, yet it also fueled Gary's determination to dissect this crisis and understand the full scope of their predicament. I need you to trust me enough to tell me everything. There can't be any more half-truths. Gary stepped forward, his heart pounding as urgency surged through him. He could feel the stakes climbing, the weight pressing against his chest as he prepared to dive headfirst into the fractures threatening to shatter their lives. You don't know what you're asking for. I can't bring Emma into all this chaos. Ryan's voice surged with panic, and a rise in defensiveness stirred within Gary. Or you can let me help her before the storm hits, before she is dragged under by your secrets, Gary replied, determination fueling his words. You have a chance to make it right. Use it. Caught in the tumult of their confrontation, Gary instinctively understood the crucial shift. He was not a passive observer anymore but an architect of resolution, if only Ryan would open the dam of truth. Okay, Ryan finally breathed, vulnerability cracking his defenses. I was involved in something that might come back to haunt us, and it's not just me. His eyes locked onto Gary's, and at that moment, the old wounds and hidden truths began bubbling to the surface. As the bakery swelled with unspoken words, the power dynamics shifted. Gary felt a tumult of mixed dread and hope, bracing himself for impending revelations that could redefine everything. Would Ryan finally expose the bone-deep connections and secrets, or would it all be swallowed in silence? The answer was about to drag them both deeper into an unfamiliar abyss, and Gary braced for the depth of truth that was ready to rise. How many more secrets lay beneath the surface, and what would they ultimately cost him? Gary's breath quickened, a mix of anticipation and dread swirling within him. He could feel the atmosphere thicken, as if the very air around them had absorbed the weight of Ryan's confession. The mossy walls of the bakery felt like they were closing in, the only light now coming from the overhead fixtures flickering sporadically, casting restless shadows on the floor. What kind of chaos? Gary pressed, his voice steady despite the tempest within. The moment felt pregnant with potential, every word carrying the power to reshape their futures. His role had shifted from a conflicted father to a seeker of truths, ready to unravel the layers of Ryan's hesitancy. Ryan hesitated, agonizing over the tremor in his voice. A crime, something I got involved in before Emma. I thought it was over, but it's resurfacing. People could come looking for me. The ghost of his past flitted behind his eyes, vulnerability merging with fear, an unsettling cocktail threatening to engulf him. You have to tell me everything. Gary's resolve resonated like a war drum, steady yet reverberating with urgency. Every detail matters, Ryan. As Ryan began to pace, the very act stressed the dichotomy of the bakery around them, a safe harbor morphing into a battleground. I worked with a group, we took risks, made bad choices, but I thought it was just a means to an end. Now it's all coming back. They know I've moved on with my life, and they want retribution. His words tangled with shame and desperation, coiling tighter around his throat. Gary's mind whirled, forcing him to navigate the harsh realities at play. It was impossible not to feel the echoes of betrayal reverberate within him. Yet, beneath the anger lay a vulnerable determination to shield Emma from new calamities. Each piece of information felt like a thread unraveling a greater mystery, and Gary needed to weave a response. Have you been in touch with them? The question cut through the air, sharp and precise. Each syllable felt like stepping on glass, daring to crunch beneath the weight of accusations and fear. I didn't want to. I thought I could leave it all behind. Ryan's eyes held desperation, searching Gary's for some semblance of understanding. They threatened to expose everything. Emma could be hurt. Your idea of protection is shattered, Ryan, Gary said, the bitterness spilling from somewhere deeper than mere anger. This isn't just about you anymore, it's about Emma's safety. You have to take responsibility. In that moment, Gary knew he had a choice to make. He could expose Ryan's lingering shadows, yet that meant exposing Emma to potential consequences she was not equipped to handle. He felt the pressure of the decision pressing down on him, a moral conundrum that left little room for compromise. Did loyalty to Emma mean protecting Ryan? Or confronting him for the deception that hung like a heavy shroud? Help me help her, Gary urged, finding clarity in his mission amidst the chaos. We can't do this alone. If you're ready to face the truth, let's formulate a plan. We approach this as a united front, and together we can conquer whatever comes next. Ryan paused, the flickering lights dissecting his profile into fragmented pieces of anxiety and hope. What if they retaliate? His voice quivered, but determination flickered in his demeanor. Then we will face them together. Gary's tone solidified, transforming his fear into actionable thoughts. He envisioned every possibility, the lives at stake propelling him into unexpected leadership. In this fractious atmosphere, Gary understood that his role went beyond mere protectiveness. It was to ground Ryan in accountability. He was no longer just defending Emma's well-being, he was carving a path through ominous predicaments that loomed large, gathering the threads of Ryan's past into a single narrative they could confront. But as they locked eyes, a new flicker of apprehension gnawed at Gary. What if the confrontation with Ryan's past unleashed something darker? What had they truly awakened in their pursuit of clarity and safety? Gary felt that once they committed to the truth, there was no going back. The stark realization seeped into him, heavy and tangible. He was faced with the precipice, confronting not just Ryan but an unknown threat that could spiral into a reckoning neither of them was ready for. What would the fallout be from standing against shadows approaching them, shadows that sought to drag Emma into their depths? The answer loomed just out of sight, but it was a question begging for resolution. The moment hung suspended in that trembling air, the flickering lights momentarily lending an eerie illumination to Gary's resolve. He scrutinized Ryan, assessing the man who was both son-in-law and potential threat. There was something in Ryan's eyes, a flash of uncertainty masked by desperate confidence. Gary couldn't shake the nagging sensation that the chaos surrounding them extended beyond the immediate threat. It encompassed the very fabric of their lives. Tell me about the group, Gary urged, forcing his voice to remain calm even as his heart raced. What do they want from you, really? Each word felt laden with weight, pulling at the threads connecting them all, demanding transparency where darkness had reigned. Ryan hesitated, hands fidgeting as if the very act of revealing the truth would shred him. They want me back. To finish what we started, he confessed, the quaver in his voice now evident. The truth hung precariously there, balanced between fear and need for redemption. Gary inhaled sharply, piecing together the implications. If the group wanted Ryan back, it meant they sensed his weakness, a vulnerability threatening to unravel everything he had worked for since Emma entered his life. You never truly escaped, did you? He didn't need Ryan to answer, the guilt shrouded him like a shroud. This isn't just about you anymore, Gary pressed. What if they come after Emma? You can't allow that. An external chaos swirled around them, yet it was the internal uncertainty that Gary grappled with. Could he navigate this minefield without the looming specter of betrayal hanging overhead? The bakery, with its sweet and savory fragrances, suddenly felt like a sterile operating room where their fates lay dissected on the cold, unyielding table. I've never wanted this life for her, or for you. I thought I could manage it. Ryan's shoulders slumped, the bravado replaced by the raw honesty of desperation. But now I see that my past might jeopardize her future. In that moment, Gary recognized a flicker of humanity beneath Ryan's turbulent exterior, but it also called into question his role as protector. Here was a man grappling with the shadows of his choices, and Gary felt a surge of responsibility both to his daughter and to Ryan, who was now firmly entrenched in their shared crisis. Let's think strategically, Gary suggested, forcing his mind into a different mode, training himself to focus on solutions rather than panic. We need to understand their motivations. What could they possibly gain from coming after you? He realized that knowledge could be their most potent weapon against fear's gnawing hold. I don't know, Ryan murmured, his brow furrowed. I never thought they'd come after me, not like this. But I'll do whatever it takes to keep their secrets buried. Then we expose them first, Gary stated, the determination coiling tightly within him. The mere thought sparked clarity amid confusion. But we have to prepare, Ryan. This is a fight we need to be ready for. I can't lose my family to your past mistakes. His words hung like an unfulfilled promise between them, lifting the weight of shared purpose. For the first time, Gary felt a sense of control, a burgeoning realization that navigating this path would ultimately depend on their collective resolve. Ryan straightened, his gaze igniting with a flicker of determination. Okay, he replied, a tentative courage bleeding into his tone. What do we need to do? Gary took a brief moment to contemplate the potential combatants they faced. The internal war wasn't merely about Ryan's past, it was an evolution of his own character. He was growing, transforming from a passive protector into an active challenger of the threats facing his family. First, we gather information about the group. We need to understand their network and their intentions. Knowledge is power, but we cannot act recklessly, he outlined, a plan slowly crystallizing. With every word, Gary rediscovered his strength. A fierce loyalty to protect Emma fueled his resolve. As they began to outline their strategy, shadows from the bakery's corners seemed to linger longer, but Gary noticed that their grip tightened on his heart less. The uncertainty that lingered wouldn't disappear, but the dawning light of agency replace it, illuminating a new era of responsibility not just in protecting Emma, but in shaping her future. But amid that realization, one question consumed him: what consequences would arise from unearthing the truth? As they plotted their next steps together, the looming dread of confrontation lingered, whispering calamities beyond his control that haunted his mind. What deeper secrets awaited them in the shadows? Gary felt an uncomfortable truth slink closer, and it was a certainty that the decision to confront Ryan's past would herald challenges as yet unseen. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting elongated shadows across the bakery's floor. Gary felt the curtain of nightfall settle around them, as if the impending darkness served a dual purpose, both shielding their actions and amplifying the unknown threats that loomed. He exchanged glances with Ryan, an unspoken agreement binding them tighter as they prepared to delve into the murky depths of concerns long buried. First, we need to map out your connections, Gary said, leaning over a notepad he'd hastily retrieved from the countertop. Each gesture felt imbued with newfound urgency. This was no longer merely about dealing with Ryan's past, it was also about fortifying their present against an invisible foe. Ryan hesitated for a moment, tension radiating from him. I haven't kept in touch with anyone from that life. They could be watching, waiting for the slightest sign. Then we move cautiously. Gary's voice took on a commanding edge as he wrote down potential leads. Do you remember anyone from the group who might be targeting you? Any weak links? The wealth of uncharted territory began to unfold before them as Ryan slumped under the weight of his memories. There were a few, but the main players were ruthless. Trusting anyone could be a mistake. Gary paused, reflecting on Ryan's insight. The more he understood Ryan's past, the clearer his own internal battle became. This was not just about protecting his family, it was about setting boundaries, discovering the limits of loyalty, and determining how far he would go to safeguard what was precious to him. Every individual from that group poses a risk, but they also offer potential information. Let us think of questioning as a means of gathering intel, Gary proposed. The words carried a charge. They were no longer mere thoughts, they embodied a growing resolve within him. Ryan nodded reluctantly. I can think of one person who might be willing to talk, someone who left before I did. But it's a gamble. Gary felt a jolt of ambition surge through him. Then it's settled. We find this person. Get inside their world and see what we can uncover. The risk involved if they find out I've reached out. Ryan's voice trailed off, but uncertainty flickered in his eyes. Fear should not dictate our choices. The stakes are too high. Gary's breath caught slightly as he confronted the reality of what lay ahead. The weight of responsibility often felt suffocating, but it also tightened his resolve. He had to transform fear into a catalyst for action, not just for himself, but for Emma, his own sense of self, and the very essence of what family meant to him. As they resumed their planning, Gary saw an aspect of Ryan surface through their dialogue: suggestibility, vulnerability, but also the capacity for growth. It struck him just how much had changed since this crisis erupted. And within Ryan's vulnerability lay a note of tenacity. He was not merely a victim of circumstance anymore. He could adapt, rise beyond his past. Let us make a plan to meet this contact. If they know something, it could turn the tide, Gary suggested, his tone carrying decisive authority. With every iteration of the strategy, a bond formed. Each word exchanged began to chip away at the chains of doubt binding them. 2 hours slipped by as they constructed their approach, and Gary found himself evolving, too. This was not merely a response to imminent danger, it was a reclaiming of agency. He was no longer just a protective father, he was a strategist, ready to confront not only external threats but the internal fears that lingered like shadows. With their plan momentarily in place, a heavy silence fell over them. In that stillness, Gary's mind raced, puncturing the weight of the night with wild questions. Would their inquiries unearth secrets that would fracture Ryan's resolve even further? The consequences of their entanglement could spiral beyond reckoning. Once we reach out, there's no turning back, Gary finally voiced, the gravity of their shared venture anchored in each word. We'll have to face whatever comes next together. Ryan's affirmation hummed with cautious optimism. Yet as hope flickered amid the uncertainty, an uncomfortable suspicion tugged at Gary's instincts. What if there were threads connecting to a past darker than they anticipated? Just how far would they have to delve to ensure Emma's safety? With the night conceding to a fragile dawn, Gary steeled himself. The contours of peril were reshaping before them, and within that turbulence was a truth, hidden yet beckoning. Would they emerge intact, or would the confrontation with Ryan's past shatter everything he held dear? He pressed the pen down, scribbling unexpected truths atop his notes, a sense of foreboding clinging in the air. The lines ahead blurred, but he knew one thing: they were now on a path to revelation, and the moment of confrontation was approaching, fraught with precarious consequences. The time had come to confront not only the shadows of Ryan's past but, perhaps more harrowingly, the shadows within himself. As dawn broke over Maplewood, Gary felt a palpable shift within himself. The resolve that had once been a whisper now surged into a roaring tide. The confrontation with Ryan had ignited a flicker of purpose, transforming uncertainties into a mission of empowerment. He stood in Sweet Maple Bakery, aware that each sunrise now symbolized not just a new day but a new opportunity to reclaim his family's legacy. Days passed like rolling waves, each one filled with newfound tenacity. Gary meticulously researched, drawing connections between Ryan's previous affiliations and the shadows threatening to encroach on their lives. He embraced every moment, formatting strategies and regaining command over the narrative that once felt hopelessly out of grasp. Ryan, too, began to exhibit signs of transformation. As they delved deeper into the labyrinth of Ryan's past, he slowly shed the layers of guilt. Gary witnessed a shift. Ryan meticulously prepared for their encounters. The bravado that had masked his insecurities faded, replaced by a vulnerable determination. Together, they emerged as a united front, tumbling through a series of conversations fraught with tension but threaded with hope. The turning point came unexpectedly. One evening, as they prepared to meet with Ryan's former contact, Gary felt the weight of sleepless nights press against his eyelids. Yet, the moment they arrived at Wilson Park, a location Ryan anxiously selected, they were greeted not with closure but an unveiling. The contact, a hesitant figure wrapped in shadows, provided insight so deep that it rattled the very foundation of their understanding. The connections Ryan had feared were not just individuals seeking him out but a network exposing broader vulnerabilities threatening everyone involved, particularly Emma. As the truth unfolded, Gary felt the clarity wash over him like a refreshing current. The confrontation had morphed from one of mere accusation to revelation and solidarity. They were ushered into a realm where Ryan's past no longer dictated their present. It became a stepping stone towards clearer waters. Each twist enriched Gary's perspective, illuminating the myriad ways family could be defined not solely by blood but also by the choices made in the face of adversity. With the revelations of that night, Gary's sense of agency solidified further. He guided Ryan toward accountability, urging him to own his past mistakes while forging a path for shared accountability. As they reclaimed their narrative, the bakery itself felt rejuvenated, echoing with laughter and dreams that felt tangible once more. Weeks later, the transformation solidified in a family meeting where Gary sat alongside Emma and Ryan, hearts laid bare amidst the warm ambience of the bakery filled with the scent of freshly baked bread. Gary took a deep breath, merging vulnerability with conviction. "We've all faced shadows in this journey," he began, his voice steady. "This bakery has always been about bringing people together, and today, it's about healing." Emma's eyes shimmered with understanding, while Ryan, standing at the precipice of redemption, nodded in affirmation. They delved into their truths, past mistakes aired out like linens in the sun, all of which served to enrich their bonds. Gary offered understanding without losing sight of boundaries, facilitating an environment that encouraged Ryan to embrace his choices and commit fully to a brighter path, one that honored their family. As the conversation unfolded, a mutual appreciation emerged, a realization that the warmth they had fought for was not merely rooted in sweetness but in the sincerity of empathy and protection. They emerged from the gathering as a cohesive unit, fortified by trust. The past now served not as a ghost haunting their happiness, but as a tapestry interwoven with lessons of growth. Months passed, the bakery flourishing anew. Gary reveled in the recognition of his hard work, having been awarded the prestigious Local Business Innovator Award. This recognition resonated not only in his professional life but seeped into his personal transformation. He had not only reclaimed his business but had facilitated a rebirth of trust and love within his family. Gary stood behind the counter one afternoon, watching as Emma and Ryan interacted with customers, smiles punctuating the atmosphere. The warmth of the bakery felt like a shield against the world surrounding them. He realized that in confronting the chaos ushered in by betrayal, he had forged an indomitable legacy of resilience, a testament to the bond of family tempered through tumult. In this fleeting moment, profound satisfaction bloomed within him. He had not only fought for his family but had emerged victorious. As the afternoon sun cast golden hues through the bakery windows, a sense of accomplishment enveloped Gary's heart. The story he had fortified was no longer about betrayal. It was one of rebirth, intricately woven with commitment, trust, and an unwavering belief in second chances. He had recognized the critical role he played, learned the importance of confronting fears, and emerged as a beacon of strength that Emma and Ryan could lean on. His journey was no longer defined by lingering questions. It became a narrative celebrated amongst laughter and joy. Looking around the bakery, a space once threatened by shadows, Gary embraced the realization that the heart of Sweet Maple Bakery lay not only in the array of pastries but in the courage to face truths, craft connections, and nurture the bonds that truly mattered. Today, he stood not merely as a baker, but as a renewed steward of family. With pride swelling in his chest, Gary knew he was ready to face whatever lay ahead, standing firm on solid ground amidst the vibrant life he had rebuilt with those he loved. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. You need to show your support. Comment below your reactions and theories about this incredible conclusion, and don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformative journey. Only true fans of personal overcoming stories understand the impact of your support.